right. So I'm Chris Ammons, and this is Samara. I'm Associate Creative Director at Red Pepper, and my background is visual storytelling, so a lot of like concepting work, art direction, design, all that kind of stuff.
Hi. My name is Samara Anderson, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing Sales at Red Pepper. Has anybody heard of Red Pepper before? A couple of you? Nice. Thanks, Dan. So we're a full-service agency in Nashville, Tennessee, in the Germantown area. Been around for about 17 years or so. And so I was really excited to hear from Amber and the crew here. I'm really involved in the AAF chapter in Nashville, and she wanted somebody to come and speak on the topic of creativity, empowering creativity. What are some of our processes that we use? What are some of the things that are in place inside of our culture and our physical space that help empower creativity? So it made a lot of sense for Chris to be here, and then I was like, can I come too? Because I grew up around here. My dad is from here. He lives in Jonesboro. I went to Colonial Heights Middle for a little while. I don't know if anybody went to Colonial Heights Middle School. So I was like, can I come too so that I can see my dad? But also, I think what hopefully we'll be able to offer you guys today because of that is a little bit of perspective from the business side of things. So, what some of the things we put in place from an operations standpoint and what we do on the new business side of things to help unleash creativity. And then obviously from like your own personal practice and some of the things in the work of the work, Chris can offer that perspective as well. So hopefully you'll get a little bit from both angles today. The plan is we have about 35 minutes of content, hopefully plenty of time for discussion and Q&A. We're going to walk through a bit about Red Pepper, our culture, what instills creativity inside of our people, as well as the physical space itself, which has a lot to do with our creativity. Chris has some awesome takeaways and some things you can maybe start putting into your practice. We'll go over those. And then we have just some fun work to share with you guys from brands like Slack and Cracker Barrel, and maybe a few you haven't heard of. So that's the plan. That's kind of the flow, a little three-part, content outline. So we'll get going with that. Sound like a plan? Great. Awesome. So just, diving right in. How many of you guys have core values in place inside of your companies? Nice. That's awesome. And do they drive behavior? Are they the filters you guys use to actually make decisions through? Or, that's kind of where most core values tend to fall off, and that's okay. I mean, there's a lot of ways to make core values more actionable. We do a lot of things inside of our company to make sure that the core values are lifted up. One of which is right when you walk in, they're the first thing you see. So instead of work or awards or things like that, our core values are the first thing you see. And we consider ourselves to be a very culture-centric company. We kind of put the culture above anything else. Really, we say culture, people, clients. And the idea is that if people are bought into something bigger than themselves, it's not just about me, it's not my ego, it's not my opinion. Ultimately, the creative does end up being better, right? And then ultimately, the clients actually benefit. So it's okay that we put them third. But we do want to run it, in that order, the company, as best we can. And we try our best. And the 5 core values that we really live by are here, and I'll read them to you guys in case you can't see them. So from right to left, if we aren't changing, we're dying. We actively support personal growth. We believe everyone is uniquely creative. We provide creativity with provable benefits, and we engage each other's strengths and passions. So I do want to dive into these a little bit because I do feel like these do empower creativity inside of our organization. And there's a few of these that maybe your organization could adopt or a version of. The 2 on the right, in fact, we say every company needs a version of these. So if we're not changing, we're dying, right? So as humans, we're averse to change, we're scared of it. As soon as we see something's working, we hold on to it as tight as we can, right? And we don't want to let that go. But the truth is, that's why, Blockbuster didn't think of Netflix, right? That's how you get disrupted. That's how you don't see what's coming around the corner. So if you lift up change and failure and make that a part of your culture and ask people to try things, even if they're not sure whether or not they're going to work, then you're going to move the organization along. You're going to move your clients along. And one of the ways that we do that is by really pushing each individual to grow. So we actively support personal growth. We have growth check-ins, we have growth challenges, we have retreats, we have a weekly meeting where someone teaches every week. So we try very, very hard to push each individual to grow as much as they can. You really can't push somebody too much to grow. And to bring those learnings back to the company, and then ultimately that pushes us forward. So those are kind of a little duo there. They work very much together, and they're very much needed in this environment as things change so rapidly, as technology influences how we communicate with each other, how brands communicate with consumers and customers, and all of that. Then the three on the left are a bit more about how we work. So we believe everyone is uniquely creative. So oftentimes, especially in an agency environment, I know there's a great mix of people in here today, from freelancers to in-house creative to awesome specialists and things like that. But I'm sure there's a bit of a stigma that the ideas have to come from the creative department, right? Or the strategy has to come from strategy. And once you start to break those walls down, those barriers, and you lift up the fact that an idea can come from everywhere and everyone's required to be strategic and everyone's required to be creative, you start to see more collaboration, you start to see more ideas coming from unexpected places. So that's why that core value exists, and we try to lift it up as best we can. We provide creativity with provable benefits. That one kind of speaks for itself in this day and age, right? So we need to be able to prove what we're doing. We're not fine artists. Sometimes we wish we were, but we're not. And so we have to be able to prove what we're doing. And so lifting that up and making sure we're checking back to objectives and things like that from the beginning is important. And then finally, we engage each other's strengths and passions. So working in an integrated style where the right perspective is brought in at the right time, leveraging that person's unique ability and not rounding their corners and really allowing them to be a star inside of an organization is difficult. It's easy to kind of say, well, this is the way we've always done it, or if that person's not on the project, we don't want to bring them in, it ruffles too many feathers, but how can you create a process and visibility and transparency so that the right people can say, hey, we should bring in so-and-so, I think they would be able to really, crank this up a bit, or they have a unique way to spin this, and so that's why that core value exists. So we put a lot of emphasis on these. We do use them to hopefully drive a lot of behavior and a lot of the way that we lift up creativity inside of our organization. And it's sort of the foundation for everything we're going to talk about today. Another thing that's really important to our creativity at Pepper is the physical space itself. So you've got the culture and how that helps lift things up. And then the environment is not just the culture. The environment is very much the room in which you're at. And how many of you need to clean your desk or clean something up or get something perfect before you really feel like you can get in the mode or the zone? Anybody else like that? Yeah. So, and then it's interesting because at home, when we go home, right, we have rooms for different things. It's like, I'm not going to cook dinner in the living room, and I'm not going to, work out in the bathroom, whatever. There's places for things in your home. But how often do we go into work and we go into our cube or whatever it is, and you crank out everything for the day in that one space and maybe take 1 or 2 breaks? So is anybody guilty of that? Not moving around? Yeah. So when we built our new space, and don't get daunted by the fact that, we can't rebuild our whole space. Just think about it a little bit. How could this apply to your life? But what are the different modes you need in your day to be your creative best? And what's a physical place inside of your building or outside of your building or even in your home that you can incorporate into your work day to hopefully get a bit more out of yourself? Because the space, it can shut us down if we're not careful. So we have a few different work modes that are in place inside of our building. The first work mode is called zoning. So this is the deep thinking time that's so needed. Oftentimes we head into a brainstorm meeting without first doing this, or we go into a group think, a team atmosphere, and we haven't had time to get into the materials. So we find ourselves on our computer before we've even had a chance to really start collaborating with people. So you've got to have that deep thinking time, right, beforehand. We call that zone mode. We have rules around it. It's a 60-minute uninterrupted time. You cannot bother someone when they're in a zone. So you can put a time on your desk outside of it. We have these little plexi things. You can't see it in this picture. Or you can book a zone room, which is, they're actually funnily named. It's cow zone, danger zone, end zone, and I don't remember the other one. But you can book one of those rooms, and you can book it for an hour, and you can put your name on the outside, and literally no one's allowed to bother you. You're supposed to turn off all electronic devices, and then you're supposed to focus on one single topic for 45 minutes to an hour. How often do we do that? Not nearly enough. We should be doing that once or twice a day to really get into our creativity. So we created rooms to hopefully engage people. She's not actually supposed to be on her computer during a zone, but it made for a pretty picture. So once you're done zoning, a lot of times you want to go collaborate with someone. Proximity in our world and creativity is so important, right? Being able to bounce an idea off somebody, being able to collaborate, make an idea better. Your idea fuses with theirs, creates a whole new idea. So we have team rooms. There's 10 of these in our space, and they're dedicated to projects or clients, and you know that if you go into that space, everything in that room, everything on the wall, everything anywhere around it is focused on that client. So you've got maybe it's the style guide, maybe it's a research brief, maybe it's the creative brief, whatever. That room is meant to really get you in the mode of that particular client or project, and it's also the place where you can collaborate with your teammates. So that's team mode. Energy mode, how many of you guys like to go to the coffee shop and you get that when you're getting that slump at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're like, oh my God, I can't, I need coffee or whatever, but really what you're craving is a zap of energy. So a lot of times you can get that off of other people. So we have a little cafe area in the middle of our space, we call it Wonderland, and that's where we buy into the idea of energy mode. So if you need a little bit of a bump from people, you can go in there and do that. So think about that. Where's your energy mode? Where do you go? When do you need it? What time of the day? Are you a morning person? Are you an afternoon person? That kind of a thing. And plan out your week accordingly. And then finally, task mode. So when you don't need visual or audio privacy, where do you go to crank out emails? And how often do you make the mistake of doing that right out of the gate in the morning? You probably should wait till the afternoon when you have less brain power and you don't need the brain power. So task mode is important. It keeps us up to date. It's the communication between ourselves and our clients and our teammates. And we have workstations for that, where you can go and you can have your own personal space, sitting or standing desk, and you can go in there and you can do your thing. There's no video, there's no audio or visual privacy, but you don't really need it. You have other rooms for that. So, because we thought about, should we build a space where everybody gets, quiet time in their own desk, and do we need to build an all open environment so everybody can collaborate? And we did a ton of research and we found it actually needs to be a bit of a balance of both for introverts, extroverts, types of work, styles of work, and ultimately came up with the idea of work mode. So these are very important to our creative process. I would encourage you to think about how that can apply to your life inside of your space where you work, or what other things you can tap into to make that work for you. And I wanted to share with you guys just some things that kind of come out of that culture. So we're an advertising agency. We're going to show you some of the legitimate work that we do. But one of the ways that we stay fresh is through experimentation. So part of what happens when you have a culture like that, a physical space like that, is it opens up opportunities for people to try and fail and bring ideas to life. If you've got an idea, try it. Why sit on it? And the best way to do that in today's day and age, make a video about it, or make a quick prototype, or whatever that might be. So we're notorious for that. As long as I've been at Red Pepper the last 7 years, we do something, it feels like almost quarterly, something that we're throwing out there in the world to see if anybody bites. And most recently, the thing that really went bananas was There's Waldo. Did anybody see this on CNN or Huffington Post or anything like that? We ruined a lot of childhood dreams by teaching a robot to find Waldo in 4 seconds. So I'll show you guys the video real quick. Yeah, so Google released a new visual AI tool, and we're like, let's play with it. We don't have any clients banging on our door saying, hey, we want to do something with this new tool. But we want to be ready when that time comes, or when we see the opportunity. So we have a creative technologist on the team. His name is Matt Reed. He has a really cool YouTube series called Touch on Tech. If you want to try to stay up to date with all the most random, obscure technology and how it's going to influence our world, you should follow the YouTube page. And he's constantly asking the question, what if? What could we do with this? How could we make this work? And then when the client comes to us and it makes sense, we're already well versed in it. So from a learning and growth standpoint, from a creativity standpoint, if you're not putting inputs in, nothing new is going to come out. So we try really hard to stay on top of technology in that way, because it certainly does influence the concepts that we develop. For Christmas, we ended up playing, Amazon came up with, I think it was Amazon, yeah, they came up with a tool as well. And we taught it to have Elf on the Shelf spy on us, and tell Santa when we were doing naughty things, and then take money from our paycheck and give it to charity. So there's fun stuff constantly coming out of that part of our company, and I think a lot of it has to do with the culture and the physical space and things like that. These are some of the clients that we work with, and we're going to show you some case studies from them in just a bit. But before we do that, we wanted to show you a quick reel of some of the recognition that we've received over the last few years, and then Chris is going to share some takeaways.
Red Pepper Ad Agency. The future is here. Advertising even school Red Pepper. So how did it know that I'm a cult person?
I've been watching this video here for the last like 20 minutes. Face deal.
So from a new business perspective, I love the experimentation that happens inside of Red Pepper, because then I get to leverage it to get the word out about us in those ways. But it has that dual purpose, because it's certainly also teaching people inside of Red Pepper how to be more creative as well at the same time. So the takeaway there is experimentation and creating an environment for failure and creating space for people to try new things, even if they don't have client value at the time. They sure will pay off ultimately in the end. So I will pass it over to Chris.
All right, so yeah, these are some ideas we found helpful to keep in mind while doing creative work. So not really rules, but these are kind of some guidelines that we find ourselves checking back to a lot. The first one is embracing limitations. I think, once you realize the sandbox that you're playing in, it's a lot easier to be creative. If you're kind of resisting that and doing all this work over here, like pushing these ideas over here, when you really need to be over here, you're not going to get very far. You're not going to sell the work through. It's not going to make a difference, But I think once you understand the limitations, there's always places you can push within there. You can go deep inside that box instead of trying to push outside of the box. I think that's something that once you really understand the limits you're working in, then there becomes infinite possibilities. Another one that I really push with my teams is being prolific. So just making as much as possible. I think it's really easy to come in and make one thing and try to make it really perfect or whatever, but that refinement comes later in the process. At the beginning, you need to be making lots and lots and lots of stuff. Just as many ideas as possible, just as rough as possible, and then we can take and refine them from there. But by going broad at the beginning, you have a lot better chance of hitting something that's really strong. Another one is allowing time to go deep with those ideas. So once you've gone really broad, then you take those ideas, the ones that seem to stand out, and take it and pick it all apart. Put it back together differently. See where it goes. Don't just take the thing and call it done. You need to take it and mess with it. See how much you can push it before it breaks. What does it turn into? What's different executions of it look like? So I think that's something that is really easy to overlook. I think you can rely on kind of exercises or techniques and stuff like that to be like, oh, well, we've got this idea, but no, you've got the start of it. You need to start taking it and see where you can go with it. Getting to the heart of the idea kind of is the next step of that. So once you've done this, got this idea you want to run with, that's when you start taking things away. You simplify it, you get down to the heart of it, and what's the core essence of what you're trying to do, and you let that inform all the aesthetic and creative decisions. So rather than, saying, well, I like this thing, or this is really on trend right now, so this is what I want to do, you let the idea dictate that, and that's where you come up with stuff that's really fresh looking and fresh sounding, and that reinforces the core concept rather than just kind of feeling like window dressing that's tacked onto it. Another thing that that Samara got at So we really try to treat every project like an experiment. You know, David Bowie said, creativity is one of the few human endeavors where you can crash your plane and walk away from it. You know, which I think is very true. You know, worst case scenario, something doesn't work, you just try it again on something else, you know. There's always something you can learn from trying the stuff, whether it works for that project or not. You know, you can always do the other thing that you were gonna do anyway. So it's really pretty low risk. Yeah, so I think those are kind of some core principles that we use to kind of check back to, and I think, you know, we'll show you some work and you'll see how these kind of tie in. The first one is Slack. Do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, sure. So do you guys use Slack? Anybody use Slack? You guys heard of Slack? That's great. They just rebranded yesterday. Did y'all see that?
Yep.
Whole new logo. That was not us, unfortunately. Would have been nice. But yeah, so they came to us a few years back. It's probably 3-4 years ago, and they tweeted, "Do any agencies use Slack?" And we were like, "Yes." This is what it was. No one had heard of it really at the time. From a new business standpoint, that's the first time I've ever won business through Twitter. We were like, yes, we do. And we were in an RFP situation with TBWA and some of the biggest agencies in the world. It was really exciting. But you never know where the opportunities are going to come from and when that overlap can happen when you find a brand that you're really passionate about and they want to find you. So they found us on Twitter. We did a cool campaign for them where they did some city takeovers. And then they came back a few years later, a whole new team, of course. They've turned over. How many times does that happen where you have to re-win the business? But that happened here, and it was fun. We took the brief, and that's where Chris and I do a lot of collaboration with the team and getting into that mode of really trying to get creativity to crank out of people super fast is not easy. And in a high-stakes environment where you're trying to win a piece of business like Slack, there's even more pressure. But we work really hard to keep it inspiring and to hopefully create a space where people enjoy that time together. And what I think is really cool about, what came out of Slack was we used some of the principles that we just shared with you guys. We wanted to prototype our idea, bring it to life. We only had a day to turn this idea into something, and we knew we didn't have the set or the things in place to be able to really translate the idea we came up with. So we created a little prototype video to get the idea across. So I'll show you the prototype video, and then I'll explain how we landed on that concept. This is what we went into the pitch with.
Work isn't files or emails.
It's people coming together to share ideas, solve problems, make things, and talk trash about each other's sports teams. It's groups, departments, working on their own projects, but working side by side, adding up to more than a head count. It's an interconnected network of people, ideas, and resources. It's sharing knowledge, sharing accomplishments, and sharing which taco truck is best. It's a place, a culture, a home.
And it's all in Slack.
Nice. So that was all one take. We had people all behind the scenes with popsicle sticks. You can't imagine. Chris was leading this whole effort. It was quite hilarious. Fishing wire all over the place. But how many of you have ever had a really cool idea and it's super creative and awesome, but you have no idea how to sell somebody on it? And certainly a client who you just met, you have no rapport with, no trust. We really wanted to translate the idea of the channels as physical spaces. So Slack has all these awesome channels, and it's really hard to explain the platform to someone if you've never gotten in there and played around in it. But one of the most unique things about it that separate it from just being a basic messenger tool are the channels. And so we're like, well, let's make each channel a physical room and then travel through them. And then, that'll really help bring it to life. And that was how we did that. And it won. We got the business, and the next thing you know, Chris and his team are in Dallas putting together a set to bring that to life physically in real life. So we'll show you some of those spots and how they turned out. And these ran during the World Cup last year.
This is Ammons, and this is Slack, our company's hub for collaboration. Teamwork on Slack happens in channels, so Anna can see that marketing is working on a new campaign, while sales talks terms and closes the New York deal. And Anna can share the new vacation policy with everyone. With Slack, the right people across your company are kept in the loop, and the information they need is always at their fingertips. Slack, where work happens.
Yeah, so that was, obviously, as you can see, that was a much bigger production than that little video we made at the first, but I think, the core idea is the same, and it was like, how can we express this quickly that gets the idea across? That's not just a sketch or, a comp of some kind, and so we ended up we went down to Dallas and we built these 4 rooms that were kind of one right beside each other, and everyone slid through there, and I think the wardrobe stylist, I think, almost killed me because everything, I was like, it has to be in the color palette of Slack. If you look at it, everything in the whole room is in the color palette. So she had to dress like 15 people in all these colors. And I was like, it can't be the same color as anything in the room. It's got to stand out. But, I think if you look at it though, I think, what's cool about it is that you have, sorry.
Dad is launching
Part of
as a sales lead.
everything with advertising is that, a commercial like this is running on something big like the World Cup. People aren't really paying attention. They're kind of just passively watching. And so you're always kind of looking for something that's going to hook somebody, that's going to be like, get them to look up and remember. So I think with this, if they looked up, at least they saw this color explosion, and it was the same colors as the Slack logo in the Slack brand. So it kind of tied it back that way. And I think, that could be kind of the hook in people's memory, and the executive producer on this shoot was the producer of Pee-wee's Playhouse, and he told me, he was like, this is the most colorful set I've ever been on in my life.
How many Macs did we spray paint for this?
Oh, I don't know, there was probably like 20 max, and then all the office furniture too was, we went through so much paint on this thing. But yeah, the next thing is Cracker Barrel here that we'll talk about, and this is a brand. So we did for a long time. We've done all their retail side. So Cracker Barrel has the restaurant, but then they have the whole retail store, and so there's an idea that was a big kind of check back for us with the work we did for Cracker Barrel, which is this idea of in the particular lies the universal, which is something that are you guys familiar with James Victoria, a designer and kind of teacher guy, but he talks a lot about this. I think he lifted it from Charles Dickens. But the idea is basically that if I do a good job describing my village, then I do a good job describing the world. So the more kind of particular and individual you can make the experience seem, then the more people can relate to it, because they kind of paint their own picture of like, oh, I have had experiences like that, and it evokes these memories that they've had. So that was kind of a guiding thing with this. Is we wanted to, with Cracker Barrel, obviously you're working a lot with the tradition, is a big thing for them, and family and togetherness, and these kind of like shared memories, So we did a lot of like photo-based work for them that was, we just wanted to create this feeling of these kind of memories that are being made, so that people can kind of tie this back to their own memories that they have that they're really fond of. So we're selling products, but we're also using that to tell a larger brand story. So here's another one. This was actually the last shot of the thing, and the kid had been really good. He was getting really antsy, and we're like, okay, the last one, do something crazy, whatever you want. And then he just threw this in the guy's face. He was laughing there, but he wasn't too happy afterwards.
Actors.
Yeah. Here's another one. Just so everything feeling like it should be like a snapshot in the moment, not, even though it is actors and lit and on a set and everything, it still should feel very in the moment, snapshotty, And now out systems,
Sure. And I think one of the things that you did really great with the Cracker Barrel work was bringing back some of those brand colors, and it's really hard to work with a brand that we all know so well, and you don't want to change it up too much. But sometimes, as the brand, we tend to forget some of the things that are ownable that we have no one else does. And that mustard color is very recognizable. And they had eliminated it from a lot of their marketing and communication materials. So that was one thing that y'all brought back, and I thought was really smart.
Yeah, I think the idea basically being that, if you see that color, you think of Cracker Barrel, that's the Cracker Barrel color, but they weren't really using it. They'd even kind of moved away from it in their billboards. It was this kind of this blue that was one of their secondary colors or whatever, and you know, as soon as we started working on this, it's like, okay, we're putting this down at the bottom so that every time you see this, it's clear that this is Cracker Barrel communicating to you right here, you know?
So you all are definitely not the target audience for OutSystems, but this is a new, so working with Slack, again, new business, so as you get a client like Slack in the SaaS world and software as a service, it opens up more doors, right, for others in that industry. And we're not a specialist in any particular industry, as you probably saw from the list of logos. But, you know, from a business standpoint, you want to be opportunistic. When you get a client in a certain vertical, you go for it. So OutSystems is actually really interesting. They might go public soon, I'm not sure, but they're growing like crazy, and it's basically starting to eliminate code. So they have a low-code platform where you can build enterprise-level apps and websites and platforms. So code's kind of making its way out. It's an interesting thing that's happening, and it's more drag and drop and visual design in that space now. So that's where the industry's headed, and OutSystems is on the leading edge of that. And it's scary, you know, if you're a developer, right? You're like, am I about to lose my job? But the truth is, no. This is the type of tool that can allow a developer to do 10 times more things. So how do you create a TV spot or a video, rather, that speaks to a developer? It's very, like, you know, kind of like an engineer, very suspicious, very averse to advertising and being told what to do. We needed to introduce a whole new category, which is low-code development. We needed to introduce a whole new name, which was OutSystems, and to an audience that's probably not very receptive to the message. So again, we had learned so much from Slack about how software companies work, and this is a really important thing as you think about your clients or your internal groups. What are they doing day to day? What is their life? Well, for software companies, it's product sprints. So how can we kind of evolve our marketing or our creative processes to match how they typically run their side of the business? It's these, you know, they work in sprint mode. So we created this process where we pulled integrated teams together, and they worked for a week-long sprint, and at the end of every sprint, we produced low-fidelity videos to show them different concepts of where we could go with their marketing communication. So learning from that pitch mode of Slack, we turned it into an actual deliverable and an actual process that clients can buy from us now. So it's really neat. And so we produced every week for 3 weeks. We would produce 4 videos throughout the week. So we'd go through a day of input, then you'd do a day of scripting, storyboarding, video production, and then editing. In fact, every Friday they'd have 4 or 5 little concept videos. And sometimes they were animatics, like little drawings type things, and sometimes they were live action. So I want to show you the prototype video that got this concept sold through, and then we'll show you the spots that resulted that we put out in the world. And Kevin, actually, with him and I, was a big part of getting this message out to the world through the media plan.
Management is constantly asking for new apps.
We work faster using low code without systems.
No, wait. I'm saying we need a system.
Without systems, we can visually develop and manage all our enterprise apps.
Without systems.
Exactly.
Manage all your systems without systems.
The only problem there is that the client was like, let's just go with this. So we're like, no, that's our art director and our tech guy. It's not happening. But we're like, we swear we can make it better. And Chris will get to talk about this in a second, but we got to hire like improv actors out of Chicago and really just give them some space and some freedom, which was a whole new way of working to develop the 2 spots that ended up going to market.
We had so many new apps to build, and even more change requests.
We could do more without systems.
Oh yeah, without systems.
Really? It's low-code development for creating web and mobile business apps.
Without systems.
Exactly.
We call that guy Eyebrow Guy, and I'm realizing you have to have some pretty amazing eyebrows if you're going to overlook that stash altogether. He's not stash guy, he's eyebrow guy. And then this is the second spot I ran.
Hey man. Whoa, you seem different. Yeah, I'm a lot more relaxed without systems. Without systems? Oh, yeah, it's awesome. Now we can create and manage enterprise apps in half the time. Without systems. Exactly.
Did you see Eyebrow Guy in the background? So that was an example, and I would love for you to talk about this a bit. The client asked for an exoskeleton. Like, you know, when you have a really good idea and you're sold on it, you're very excited about it, and then someone adds something to it, you're like, that ruins your idea, or that's not on it. But I think your team did a great job of making the exoskeleton work.
Yeah, so we had this concept, which, I mean, as you could tell, obviously that's like a classic, like, who's on first kind of joke, and that came up because during the concepting, you know, they're talking about it, and they would be like, without systems, and someone would be like, wait, I keep feeling like I'm saying without systems, not without systems. And so we're like, okay, there's a joke there, let's run with that. And when we showed it to them, they were like, at first we thought you were making fun of us, but you're really smart. But yeah, so we had this concept that they loved, and then they were like, so something we've been kicking around internally is this idea of an exoskeleton, and how OutSystems is basically like an exoskeleton. And they sent us all these pictures of like these guys in these big things, you know, where they've got like the joystick hands, and they're like 8 feet tall, like, you know, like something like this. And we're like, okay, that's cool, but what does that have to do with this? Like, just see if you can work it in, you know. But then we're like, well, what we could do is there could be a second spot where he comes back, and the guy that had been told about it in the first spot, you know, like he's moved up in the world because he's got OutSystems. So that was how we worked it in. I think it actually was pretty seamless, and it kind of brought this ridiculousness to it that I think really resonated with that audience. You know, I think the thing with that audience is they're really skeptical of being advertised to. You know, so when you can take something and make it a little ridiculous and kind of poke fun at, and which you're kind of doing with the whole joke in the first spot, you know, but then the second one, take it even a little more over the top of the exoskeleton, and, you know, it's kind of like a little wink, rather than, you know, it shows you're not taking yourself too seriously, and that you get that they're a little bit cynical, you know, so I think that's what really helped that work. And now we're going to talk a little bit about this idea of personal practice. I'm sure some of you guys are already doing this, but this is something that I found really valuable in keeping myself kind of creatively inspired and engaged and growing, and I really try to get my team to do this too. And this is basically the idea that you just pick something and you start making stuff. You know, preferably with stuff that you can do easily every day. You know, it could be that, like, you know, I'll show you some stuff here that I just would go in and open in a Photoshop document at the beginning of the day, and the goal was like, by the end of the day I have to have this thing done. You know, other times it's like little videos, and you can, you know, I think this kind of stuff, it's really helpful to put it on a social platform like Instagram or something like that, because it will help hold you accountable to it. You know, we do this kind of stuff company-wide too, with things like these 30-day challenges where people pick something they're gonna do every day for 30 days, and it'll be like, anything from like, I'm gonna work out every day to, I'm gonna take pictures every day or whatever, you know. So these are some of the stuff that I've done, and I'll kind of take you through what it was and kind of what I got out of it. So the first one is this thing called Hand Explorer. I found this paper hand laying around and just started making these videos. So, see, picking out some items from my Christmas wish list. What do you want for Christmas? You know, then, this is about a year ago I was doing this. Starting the new year right with some delicious donuts from Whole Donuts. Yum, which one should I choose? You know, and then you just take this horse and you just beat it until it's beyond dead. But yeah, here's another one. Exercising my constitutional rights by attending a public protest. Do you like to stand up for your beliefs? You know? And then this one just said, help. No, then I came back I took like a week off from posting, and then I came back with some more, because that was actually a spare one. I made a bunch of spares so that they were always around, so I could like have easy access to them. But I think what's cool about doing something like this, I would like carry it around in my little jacket pocket, sticking out, and you just see these little fingernails. But what's cool about it is it caused me to be like kind of always looking at, you know, I just looked at stuff very differently. I was always thinking like, oh, is that something I can make a video of? But like, you just found all this inspiration in stuff that you're normally seeing every day and not really engaging with. You know, it was like a new lens to look at things, you know. This is another one. I used to do a lot of photo retouching, oversee a lot of photo retouching, you know, for these like large scale things. And I used to also get a lot of junk mail. So I took an X-Acto knife and started kind of doing some manual retouching. But these were just little things that you could sit down every day or just set it up on the side of my desk, you know, and throughout the day you just be like, here's a glue stick, here's some tape, you know, and then you've got, before you know it, you got like 50 or 60 of these things. This was one of the first ones that I did, I think, actually, and it's still one of my favorites, because it's like, it's pretty creepy. But yeah, I mean, I think with that, you know, it can be a way to kind of vent frustrations about things. It can be a way to kind of try out new stuff. It basically becomes this playground where you can experiment freely, and it doesn't have to tie back to your work. But what happens is you end up finding all this stuff that does come back and tie into your work. You know, this was one where I did these when I was really frustrated with advertising, and I was like, I'm so sick of this, you know. Well, and I would just come in every day and open up a Photoshop document, and these were just pictures of stuff I would see on the street, you know. So here, you know, it's got some really good copy that I wrote in here, like, stay wild, baby, never change, you're a successful woman, you've come a long way, great work. Like, I actually saw this on a storefront in Philly, and yeah, so this day is a cool day, I like this day, loving life, positive vibes, good day for romance, good day for love. Also, I like how the cigarette, like how it like got lit and burned just a little bit. But, do you like surprises? Wow. Like scary Neil Young mask for sale, surprise from box, spooked ya. You know, I mean, it's just like being stupid, you know, just no. Yeah, knock knock, who's there? Me telling you a spooky joke. Yeah, this one, there was a harvest moon one night, and then I was like, next morning, did you see the moon last night? Too crazy. Was it a harvest moon? Nah, dog, too cold for that. What was it? I don't know, but it was too cool. But you know, this was just like me like blowing off steam, but when I go back and look at it, like I was experimenting with a lot of things in regards to like composition, layout. I was really breaking down a lot of communication that happens in advertising and seeing like at what level does it become too basic, you know, what level is it like stupid, how basic can you go before you're absolutely not saying anything, you know. And I think then when I stepped back from that, there was a lot of things that I could learn from this like completely stupid exercise that helped me be better at my job, you know. So I think it's, you know, but if I had thought about like I want to learn this and that, I want to get better at this and that, and tried to put that into this, it would have been overwhelming, you know. It's because I was just like, I'm going to do this stupid little thing, and I got to get this done every day. Then I was able to make all this work and not overthink it and just get it done, you know. And I think that's where these limitations, you know, we were talking about embracing limitations earlier, that's where these limitations became really helpful, you know. The limitations were what enabled me to execute all those projects quickly and without, you know, taking over my life or getting obsessive or anything like that. It's just like, okay, I've got these little things, and here's all the little rules, now I'm going to do them, you know. So, yeah, that's what we got. You guys got any questions?
I was just telling you why you were getting broke.
Okay.
I've got a question.
All right.
So, because I do get to work with you guys in Nashville, the thing I do know what Samara, what you had mentioned about the culture of Red Pepper, and I can attest to it. It's, you know, it's definitely easy to see when you work with you guys. But from your role in business development and all, I wondered how your culture fits in with you looking for new clients, and are you looking for a client that's a fit with your culture necessarily? I just wondered, I'd love for you to speak a little bit about how that plays into your role.
Yeah, Chris would probably like me to be a little choosier on that sometimes. No, it's important. I think there's a lot of factors, and culture is one of them. In business, we have to pay the bills, right? I think when it's not a good fit, it's when a client doesn't necessarily want to collaborate or be a strategic partner. So we're set up in a way where we're not just an execution shop. We really want to concept with a client, we want to strategize with the client, and when they come in and they maybe just want us to execute, or they don't value that part of our smarts and our ability, that's typically where most prospects get weeded out. But then, yeah, culturally, I think we have said no in the past because it didn't line up. Maybe they were just super egocentric or very unwilling to be heard, like for us to be heard and for us to collaborate. I think that that doesn't really align with our core values of everyone is uniquely creative and strengths and passions and things like that. So if you've got someone that's just going to come in and dominate and be that overwhelming voice as a client, that doesn't work. And sometimes we accidentally start working with a client like that, not realizing it, and then we have to kind of part ways later on. So yeah, but it's a tricky thing to manage for sure. But I'm hyper aware of it and much rather not make that mistake just for the sake of getting a new client. So yes, sir.
Creativity has a huge nemesis, has the same arch enemy. Now, budget might be one, but the biggest one, what I'm thinking of, is deadline. And what impressed me was the Slack promo. You said you did that in a day. That's amazing. But how, in dealing internally with your team, how do you keep creativity pure in face of deadlines every day?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that discussion is brought up consistently in the company, and it's a tension point for us because I want to tell the client, of course we can get it done by that time, and he wants to give his team the time to do things properly. And I believe in the modes that it takes for creative to work. So I'm on board with that, but then I'm staring down the face of a client who wants it by a certain day. So I think it's a better question for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes deadlines could be really good. Sometimes it's the kick in the ass that you need to get something done, I do think there's definitely times where, that little triangle of cheap, fast, good, pick two, there's definitely times like that, where it's like, okay, we don't have time to get something great done, we have time to get something good done, when that happens, I think you gotta realize that that's what you're gonna get done and do it that way, I think I came from like the New York agency world, which was a lot different of a work ethic than the Nashville agency world. So I was much more used to like, we're just gonna stay all night and get it done if we have to, which there are times that I've actually never pulled an all-nighter except for Create-a-thon,
Yeah,
which
just
is,
Create-a-thon, or
but,
give it back to nonprofit.
yeah, I mean, every once in a while we'll have to stay late to work on stuff, but we try to keep it minimum, but yeah, I think it's really about knowing when to lean into that and let it help you make better work, and knowing when to say, there's not time to do something great here, but we can do something good, and we're still gonna make it the best that we can.
Okay. One more?
All right.
Related to that, I used to work in an environment where every week was a new project and every week was a new, we were always in emergency crisis, have to get this done, deadline mode. And I know that certain organizations function that way. It doesn't sound like you do. How do you find that balance? You've spoken about it just a little bit. How do you find that balance? Especially when she wants to pay the bills, she wants to bring in more clients and those kinds of things.
I mean, we definitely have some projects and clients that have run that way, and I think that's the nature of our business sometimes, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just knowing when to say, like, hey, this is not acceptable, we got to figure out another solution. Sometimes that can be, let's bring new people on board, sometimes it's that we go back and say, hey, if you give us 2 extra days, we can make this even better, and here's where we can make up for it later on in the timeline, So I think solutions like that are what I often lean to. Do you have something?
Yeah, I mean, we are structured, we have a project management arm in the business that ladders up to a different department, production services, and then we have account management, and then we have creative. So oftentimes the project manager is sitting there as the go-between and relaying back to accounts what the creative needs. And I think if you can create a system where those people are not reporting to each other, but they're collaborating with each other as a group, as a team, then no one leg of that stool is going to outweigh the other. So there's client demands, there's internal demands, we have to be profitable, and then there's creative demands, we have to do good work and something we're proud of. Do we get all of that every single time? Probably not, but I like that we're set up in a way where those three voices are heard, and I think we're still getting to the place where those three voices are heard equally, and no one's overshadowing the other, and I think that's kind of the secret sauce. When we nail that, I think we'll hopefully be able to provide what everyone needs, and it'll probably vary from project to project, but did that answer your question?
It does. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. You were an awesome group to chat with, and if you have any other questions, we can hang out for a few more minutes, but we appreciate your attention.
So, thank you guys for hanging around. I know it's snowing, I'm sure phones are blowing up and all sorts of things. But thank you. Like I said, they'll stick around for 4 more minutes if you have questions. If you want to just leave your surveys either on the table or with Emily, give them to Emily on the way out. We'll enter you to potentially win a free Abby ticket. So, thank you for coming. And thanks again.